The following is an excerpt from a webinar presented by Hildy Gottlieb in 2013 as a partnership between Creating the Future and the Pennsylvania Association of Nonprofit Organizations.
I mentioned earlier that we began the first diaper bank in North America and possibly the world. It all started back when we celebrated our first full year in business as consultants back in 1994. It was holiday time and we wanted to do something to give back to our community here in Tucson, Arizona. We decided to collect diapers for two organizations we cared about. We did a press release and asked a radio station to sit in front of our office. And by the end of that December, we had raised 20,000 diapers for those two groups. And so every year we did the drive again, adding drives in the schools and then drives at all the major employers, which led to our fifth year, and that was 1998, where we collected 300,000 diapers in that 1 year. And all those diapers ended up in our 800 square foot consulting office. Now, this was just supposed to be our philanthropic gift to the community. And so, yeah, we collected 300,000 diapers. But during all those months, we were not doing consulting, which meant we had no income during those months. And so we clearly needed to find a way to get back to work. Unfortunately, though, we had uncovered a huge need that nobody was meeting because there's no safety nets for diapers in the U.S. There's food programs and programs for infant formula, but not diaper programs. We used to joke that the government would help with what went in, but not so much. You get the idea. As just one example, there are subsidies for childcare, so people can go to work. But there are no subsidies for diapers. And most childcare facilities require that parents leave disposable diapers. So just in that one instance, not being able to afford diapers meant that a mom or dad who otherwise wanted to work couldn't afford to work. Multiply that by the needs of the elderly and folks with disabilities, and the issues surrounding diapers are pretty overwhelming. And so here's what that meant for our community. During that 1998 drive, those 300,000 diapers went to 30 different agencies. But when we did a needs assessment to find out the total need in our community, we found that the agencies who serve babies, the elderly, and people with disabilities, they needed 2 million diapers every year. And so we decided to build a diaper bank. We figured we'd find out what other diaper banks had done, copy that, and then get back to our real jobs. And of course, we quickly found that we were about to build the first diaper bank pretty much ever anywhere. As we began thinking about this new organization, we knew there were two sides to the mission. First, there was obviously the goal of getting diapers to people who needed them. But there was also the larger vision. What end result did we really want to see? What did we want to be different because we were doing this? We realized that our success in collecting diapers had been directly related to sharing the stories of what put people into poverty and crisis in the first place. A mom escaping an abusive marriage with just her kids and the clothes on their backs. An elderly person who had worked hard all their lives and couldn't afford incontinence supplies because her husband's illness had eaten up all their savings. And so that became the bigger part of the mission. If we could open people's hearts to the reality of life in poverty, maybe we could begin a broader conversation about what it would take to actually put poverty behind us. That was our larger why, the thing that connected us to everyone else in the community. I mentioned that we were building the diaper bank during that period when we were beginning to question everything about social change, all the stuff that's in the Pollyanna principles. And so instead of just preparing a budget and getting funding, we took a big step backwards. We deconstructed the diaper bank function by function. And for every one of those functions, we asked, is someone in town already doing this? And if the answer was yes, we would partner with them for that particular task. Let me go over that slowly. This was not a standard collaboration where we would seek partners who also do what we do or work that was similar. This was about breaking down the diaper bank's work to consider what it really took, the functional work part of running a diaper bank. From there, we would look for partners for each of those functions, not budget line items, real operational functions. So let me share what that looked like. First, we created a flow chart and we asked what will happen and then what will happen and what will happen before that and what needs to happen after that. The diapers will be collected and somebody will have to take them to the warehouse. And then at the warehouse, they'll be counted and sorted by size. And then they'll be distributed to the people who need them, and et cetera, and et cetera, and et cetera. A simple flow chart. There's a million ways this kind of flow chart can help your programs, by the way. And if we have time at the end, ask me and I'll share some of those. For now, let me just share with you what we did with that flow chart, because that's where asking different questions led to remarkable results. When we listed out all the functions of our program, here's just a few of what we found. We needed to store the diapers. We needed to distribute the diapers to the people who needed them. We needed to get the diapers from place to place. You can already see that you can use your own flowchart to note the functions for your own programs, and that these aren't really line items. These are actually the work it takes to get the program done. First, we were going to need a whole warehousing function. This was a huge issue for us because we were never again going to live with all those diapers in our office. Now, if this were a budget line item, we'd say we need to budget for rent and utilities and insurance and personnel and equipment. But as a function, we just wanted to know what needed to happen. We need to know that someone is receiving our diapers, sorting them into sizes, keeping inventory, and then distributing them. Whether that someone was us or someone else, we just knew that someone needed to do that work. That's the difference between looking at a function, what needs to happen, versus a line item. Line items are about cash. Functions are about what needs to be done, whether that requires cash or not. From there, we asked ourselves, who already has this? Most people immediately named the food bank, but they were actually already maxed out in space, which wound up being a blessing for us. So we asked our local United Way for help, and they put out a broadcast fax to all the agencies in town. That's how long ago this was. Nobody even had email, barely, in 1998, 1999. We faxed to all the organizations in town and we told them, we need space to store 2 million diapers and an experienced warehouse operation so we can rely entirely on you to handle this function for us. If you have some extra space and someone to oversee the operation, give us a bid. And we also told them, if you're going to charge us market rents, don't bother. We can go out to the market and we can rent space. We're looking for a partner, not a landlord. And that was really important. When we had tallied up this function as a line item, it was going to cost us somewhere between $40,000 and $60,000 a year to run a warehouse ourselves. Just the experienced warehouse person alone was going to be a large chunk of that. Well, the highest bid we got was $30,000. So even if we took the highest bid, it would have saved us a fortune. The lowest bid was $6,000 from a counseling office that had a garage they never used. That proved to us that we never know who has what, and that there are huge assets all over our communities hiding in plain sight that we simply don't even know are there. We wound up choosing a local group that provides vocational training for people with disabilities. They already had the warehousing and the personnel and the insurance and the equipment, and the best part, they were going to use our diapers to teach warehousing skills to people with developmental disabilities. Can you imagine that? Many of the people in their programs actually needed our diapers to just be able to live and work independently. We were putting our mission directly into action by the very act of doing the work. The total bid for that function was $15,000. We saved anywhere from $25,000 to $45,000, and we gained a true partner. The function of diaper distribution was an interesting one for us because we knew that that would entail casework and intake. And remember, we were consultants. We'd been former business people and community organizers. We didn't know anything at all about casework. How many caseworkers would we need and how many languages would we need them to speak? And it was making us a little bit crazy. With our history of providing the diapers to agencies who then distributed them, this was an easy option to see. The interesting part, though, is what came out of that decision. First, we realized that if folks needed diapers, they undoubtedly needed something else. So it made sense to have their case handled by somebody in an organization that could help them overall. We also realized that this meant individuals receiving the diapers didn't have to qualify at yet another place with yet another form and intake process. This didn't only make it easier on us, it made it easier for the people who needed the diapers. It was just a more respectful way of working. So the question we were really asking wasn't just who's already doing casework, but also who's already doing intake. And again, there were dozens of organizations doing that work. So here's where another benefit of this approach comes in. We quickly realized that our mission was really the sum of all the missions of the 80 agencies that were receiving the diapers. So when we did speaking gigs, the stories we told were their stories promoting their work in the community. And because we were sharing rather than trying to go it alone, all those agencies, they would not only talk about the diaper bank in their own work, they would do the kinds of things that everybody says never happens. One agency would send a check to support the diaper bank every few months, always with a note of deep gratitude for what we were helping them make possible. A community organization sending donations to another organization. Another group actually offered us their volunteer coordinator. They told us, if you ever need volunteers, just call and our volunteer coordinator will find those people for you. We are constantly told that organizations won't share their money or their volunteers, but when we're all building something together, that means we all own it and we all have a stake in its success. And now the last piece I'll share with you, but you can see from all these bubbles that every program has all kinds of functions that can be shared. This one for us was the need for transportation. I mentioned that we raised 20,000 diapers in our first year of the diaper drive. Well, by the time we collected 300,000 diapers, we had individual schools raising 20,000 diapers alone. And we had to think about how to get those diapers from the schools to the warehouse. So we did what folks would normally do. We put out a call for volunteers with pickup trucks, and we got a great response. The only problem was those volunteers were available on weekends, while the schools needed somebody during the week when school was open. So we went back to that same question. Who is already running around town with large vehicles? What's interesting is that the answer was a long list of for-profit businesses. One year, a courier service picked up those diapers for us. Another year, it was a plumbing company. You can just picture the plumbing truck overflowing with diapers. In the photo here, that flatbed truck belonged to Tucson Electric, our local utility company. And one year, it was the company that delivers all those circulars and newspapers to supermarkets, like the Auto Magazine and the Rental Magazine and the Penny Saver. They had huge step vans, and they not only offered their trucks, but they told us, we've got a dispatcher. It's silly for the schools to call you and then you call us. Just have the schools call our dispatcher and we'll take care of the whole thing. So when we're looking for partners for these functions, remembering that small business owners, they're the ones who live in the community, they're raising their kids there, they're the ones who care passionately about the community. And they're always the ones who wish they could do more. The people who provided this huge service for us told us they wished they could do more. And so here's how this story comes together. With all these people doing all this work, they were just doing the work they already did. It wasn't anything new for them. The warehousing folks were already doing warehousing. The agencies were already doing casework. The plumbing company was already running all over town. And so the job of the diaper bank was to do the things that no one else was doing. We would coordinate all those roles, which really wasn't much because everybody already knew what they were doing. We would tell the story with a public awareness campaign that included billboards and a massive radio campaign and a ton of public speaking, and we'd collect and distribute diapers. Now let's talk numbers. During the first few years of the diaper bank, and this is way back in the early 2000s, Dimitri and I actually retired from the diaper bank board way back in 2005 so that the organization could fly on its own. But during those first few years, the diaper bank ran a year-round public awareness and education campaign and distributed just under 1 million diapers a year for a total of $75,000 in cash. So you'll remember in the beginning when I said, yes, you'll need cash, but you may need a lot less of it. Well, this is proof of how little cash we needed because all the rest was provided through that rich collaboration. One of our major donors called it the biggest bang he could get for his philanthropic buck. But the biggest gift had to do with the non-money side of sustainability. the abundant side that we talked about when you all shared at the beginning what makes your life sustainable. And that is the fact that every single person in every one of these functional bubbles felt they owned the diaper bank. We would get calls from the guys on the floor of the warehouse, not top-level people in offices, just regular guys doing their job. And they would tell us, we're at a size 6. Should we do a diaper drive or get the word out? Those babies need diapers. And remember, this was not our employee. This was just a guy working in a warehouse that we had contracted with to help us. But because it was a real partnership, even that person felt connected to the cause. Every business and organization that lent a hand with volunteers or speaking gigs, every one of our partners, they all felt they owned the diaper bank. If we assume we have to do everything ourselves, then we're missing out on building that abundant resource of community into our work. If we assume the only resource is cash, then we're building on what is scarce instead of the rich abundance of stuff, people and industry and just plain stuff. All those abundant assets that exist in every single community everywhere. No matter how poor or remote a community might feel, if there's an abandoned grocery store, there's an asset to add to the mix. If there's a patch of forgotten land, there's an asset to add to the mix. Chain link fencing, the UPS guy, the people who work at the cement plant, every community has an abundance of resources that can become that interwoven fabric that builds sustainability into the core of your infrastructure. I was teaching a workshop a while back where a woman approached me afterwards and she told me, we run an after-school program and I was just about to write a grant for a van to transport the kids. But there are so many groups in our community who already have vans. I'm going to go talk with them right after this about sharing those vans. Before we go to questions, I'd like to ask you, James, could you share how you built the partnership that put on this webinar?
Absolutely. I was really struck when we offered this webinar back in June because I really had that feeling of, we're doing this and we're a part of a national network that of state associations. There are 36 of them in our specific network that also do programming. And a lot of us, we've had side conversations about, wow, what if we did something together? There's got to be a way to do that. And there was something in place, but it just wasn't really working, so it wasn't moving forward. So I put it out there for a group of people to get together and explore that. And kind of that conversation was led by questions that Hildy suggested that you use in this webinar. And from that, we were able to extract what it would take to make that possible. So this is a pilot approach that we've done to partner together and take a first step into making this a lot bigger in a way that it not only builds community within our network and supports our missions in terms of the work that we do, but also helps us with the money side of it as well in terms of resource development. So I don't know if there's anything else specifically you want me to point out there, Hildy.
No, that's just such a great example. All those other statewide nonprofit associations James was talking about, they all co-marketed this webinar to their states. In that way, they could provide a program their members wouldn't otherwise get, and they figured out how to share revenues. It's another win-win-win by sharing what you already had.
And one other thing that I'll share that was pretty cool and simple to do was based on your example of how you partnered with the warehouse. It struck me during the last webinar that we were storing our a lot of financial information and files at a storage unit, and it struck me, wow, what if there's somebody I can partner with to reduce that cost? And I knew of an organization that we're close to that was struggling a little bit in terms of with their work and could use some support. So I reached out to them and said, hey, how about, would you be, and I knew they had space, and I said, would you be willing to store this information for roughly half the cost of what we currently pay? And they were able to do that, so we've done that. So that cut our costs in half that way, developed that relationship further with that organization, and helped them in the process. So it's just a win-win all around, and it's just one really small example of putting some of these ideas into action that are just pretty awesome.
Wonderful. It's a great example that this is not about fundraising. It is about the program development that happens long before the fundraising. It's about building programs by first engaging people to build it together. It's that interplay between the people and the infrastructure that will make this effort strong, all towards that higher purpose, the community we all care about.